They put every penny and every thought into making the picture and none into how they're going to get it into release. We're presented with a picture that is completed. Hopefully, they may still have a nickel to publicize it. We try to find out about, if there's no cast whatsoever, we try to find out about the filmmaker or people connected with it. Maybe he was an Olympic pole vault champion, or maybe her father was killed in the Hindenburg disaster, or maybe although she's a paraplegic, she made this movie. Or we try to find out something about the movie maker or somebody very much connected with the picture that's completely unique. Then we have something to go to the media with. There are about 20 different kinds of columns in the trades, like short takes, briefs, assignments. Then when the time comes, if you can somehow find $800 and get an ad in and say it again, you're increasing your chances of people knowing what those first-time filmmakers are doing. There are also trade magazines, post-production trade magazines, location trade magazines, box office, theater distributor magazines. Get into them too, and then gradually use that awareness of the person or picture's name to try to transfer it into media that are more broadly and more industry production and distribution related. Very often you're presented with a problem of an independent producer having no release on her or his production. In that case, you usually try to arrange for screenings for potential distributors, and you also get as much trade publicity as you can in the daily trades and also in box office or film journal or any of the other Screen International. And if you can get something at that time in the Los Angeles Times, also the Daily News or the Wall Street Journal or New York Times, anything that could draw attention to the producer even more than what the producer has done. You usually work more with the characteristics of the producer that are unusual, or how she or he raised the money, or how they came from a unique background. Anything that'll personalize what that person and the picture have to offer, you have a better chance of making a distributor feel that there's merit there to be considered for distribution.
Well, the realization that a film isn't made and then marketed. It's really planned from day one. Marketing is a really big part of a motion picture. It isn't the last part, it isn't a second thought, it isn't done after the fact. When you develop and produce a motion picture, the marketing plan and timeline has to be in place, or like Ted was saying, it's going to be very difficult to get the product released. Tie-ins have to defer some costs with outside entities. When you market a film, it isn't going to be, geez, it's an accident that a magazine cover happens to cover your picture. It isn't an accident that billboards happen to show up a couple of weeks out before a picture. It isn't an accident that a trailer hits a theater at a certain time, or that a sequence of TV spots hit the TV screen at a certain time. Everything is pre-planned. It can be years in advance, it can be months in advance, but it's always planned in advance, and it's always a very concerted effort by many disciplines, and it's not something to be discounted. Making the film is, well, it's even a stretch to say it's half the project, because it's not even half the project. Really selling it, if you can make the best thing in the world. If nobody knows about it, it's going to be on the shelf somewhere. The budgets that go with that are varied, because you can do electronic distribution, you can do your internet distribution, you can do your websites, you can do your feedback and your private thing. You end up often explaining to somebody that their first big project, their labor of love, one that's actually good, that you've got something behind that you're willing to step behind, tends to be their best shot at it. And it's a tough thing to tell them about. They're almost going to give that first one away, because the next one, if the first one's really good, it's the second and third one that's going to give them the work and the clout to come back with some ability to request something or have some input into it. And I don't know what the film schools are teaching today, but I get a sneaking suspicion that not teaching a lot of the business about the business. They may be teaching the craft, they may be teaching the art, which is very good, but I don't know if they're teaching the business side. And the business side is a big picture, and it's also a rapidly changing picture. It's becoming more corporate than it is creative now. You're getting a lot of MBAs coming in that are going through schools in general just to learn the business, and they're not learning the creative side. So you've got this disparate group growing where one's going to tell you how to make it, one's going to say what they've made, and you've actually created a great divide between them. Again, once the movie's made and you got your music issues done there, if you're going to go market the movie in a larger audience, that is, actually make commercials for it, if you don't clear the music for advertising rights as well as the actual production rights, you can start over. If you decide, well, I'm going to put some different music into the advertising because it's going to help sell it, because it's only got a 30-second clip to go through versus your 90 or 120-minute movie, you get to start all over again. So against the sync rights, the licensing rights, the whole 9 yards. And that's a different clearance situation, because now they'll also break it down lately. About 8 months ago, they started saying, when you clear something for advertising in perpetuity, worldwide, global, et cetera, they've now added an extra line going, and the internet rights will now cost you this. So it's now, they keep slicing it and slicing it and slicing it. So you have distribution rights, you have advertising rights, you have marketing rights. It just goes on and on. So absolutely do not discount your music situation.
Certainly, the subject of music and music licensing is an interesting one. A lot of filmmakers, especially inexperienced ones, tend to just use music figuring they'll get it worked out later. The record companies and the publishers love this because once it's locked in the film, they can sort of charge whatever the market will bear, and then it's just a matter of finding what the pain level is and getting as close as you can. That's business, as they say. One of the other folks here was talking about the film schools and the business aspects, and I guess I would have to agree that a lot of filmmakers who come to us, we talk to for our magazine or different things like that, just aren't aware of the issues involved with music licensing. The fact that if you're going to sync music to picture, you absolutely have to have the permission of the person who owns the music or the company, and the company who owns the recording of the music. They're two separate copyrights. And because this is not done so frequently, filmmakers, sometimes it's just, music is trouble for them. They don't want to deal with it because they're not sure what to do. It's actually very simple, but maybe if the schools could do a little bit more, not beating up on the schools here today, but it might be helpful. Many times filmmakers will put whatever music they can in the film, figuring once they get a distribution deal, well, then they'll just change it out. Ted, I'm sure you've run into a little bit of that. And that can be tricky because if they sell a film based on music that they'll never be able to afford, what are they really selling? So, and of course distributors these days, they don't want to get stuck with something where they buy one thing and then they realize what they have is virtually undistributable, as they say, because they're not music rights and there would be no way to afford them. So there's quite a market these days in replacing music, it seems. Lots of times people will get festival licenses for music, which is a license from the owner of the music to have the music in the film for festival purposes only. And this is sort of a nice in-the-middle thing because then they can get it out there, they can get their festival play, and hopefully it'll do well. And then, when it comes time for a distribution deal, that's when everybody, gets out their checkbook.
Well, there seem to be a lot of downs of independent filmmaking when it comes to distribution. The ups are, of course, just getting the thing finished and getting it out to people as best as you can. What I've come to tell friends who want some advice on distribution and can't quite fathom how you can make a good film and then not get it into the Sundance Film Festival or not get it on every cable channel or not get it onto the shelves of Blockbuster, I tell them, well, it's like selling a house. You have a house. It's a beautiful house, you want to sell it, but you're not the sort who is capable of selling a house. You could put a little for sale sign and hope that people walk by your street and knock on your door and say, I'd like to buy this house, but for the most part you don't know the ins and outs and the details and all the connections you need to have to sell that house right and to sell it fast. So you get a real estate agent. It's the same thing for selling your film. It would be great to just say, hey, I've done my film, everybody. There's 6 billion people in the world. That's a lot of people. But then you quickly find how small you are in the face of this grand populace, even if you're talking about the population of Los Angeles, millions of people, and even after several years of having the film finished and getting a lot of media attention and getting press and having screenings and getting a distributor for a couple of years and getting it on cable channel, there's still obviously tons of people who don't know it exists. What you really, really need is marketing. And what you really, really need to have good marketing is oftentimes a lot of money. And that's something a lot of filmmakers don't have. Distributors usually will have more money for marketing, and so you try to get one so that they can help market your film. But a good distributor is like a good real estate agent. Hopefully you'll get one.